Hi family, welcome to the video. So I just want to discuss this phrase that is thrown around a lot, especially with all the talk about the rapture. It's the phrase, no one knows the day and hour. And it's used a lot by mockers and scoffers to silence anyone trying to put a timeline or timestamp on the timing of the rapture. So here's my position basically on this subject. I believe that no one knows the day and the hour. That phrase in Matthew 24 is not referring to the rapture. All right, so let's first read the passage in Matthew 24, verse 34 to 36. It says, "Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place." And then we jump to 36. "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only." Alright, so to understand this phrase of that day and hour no one knows, we have to understand the context of that phrase. So just above that verse, he is talking to this generation, which will not pass away. Okay? So this generation refers to Jesus' audience during his day, which is the first century Jews, including his disciples and the Pharisees. Okay? Now, for example, another time he used this generation right here in Matthew 23. Okay, let's read the verse. That on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Bechariah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation." So he's referring to the Pharisees, whom he was addressing the many woes to in this chapter. So that's clear. This generation refers to every time Jesus uses this phrase, he's referring to the people in his day, the first century people. Now let's focus on all these things, this red phrase here. All these things take place. So what is he referring to that will surely come to pass? So we can look at the verses is immediately above this section of Matthew 24. So Matthew 36 is here. No one knows of that day, no one and hour, no one knows. And so he's referring to the verses above it, which include the signs of the times and the end of the age. So that's where he mentions all the earthquakes and wars and persecutions to come during their day. Then the Great Tribulation and the coming of the Son of Man. So he's saying that all these things above, okay, are going to pass during their generation. Okay, that's basically the statement. All right, so let's focus on these key events. For example, the third one here, the coming of the Son of Man. So a big misconception is that there's only one coming or one uh, second coming of Jesus, when actually, after his first coming as a humble servant and as a savior, he is coming back basically multiple times. So in Matthew 24, he will be coming as in judgment on Jerusalem. And then in the future, depending on your eschatological view, he will be coming again during probably in our lifetime, 2,000 years later. We can refer to this as his final coming prior to the millennial reign of Christ. So these two comings are not equal. So focusing on his coming back in their generation, he used the phrase coming in the clouds, okay? So coming in the clouds is actually Old Testament cosmic divine metaphorical poetic language, commonly used as a reference to God's coming in judgment to destroy a wicked city or nation. Typically using a foreign army as his instrument of judgment. So this kind of language is not a literal one, okay? You won't really see Jesus flying up in the air when he uses this kind of language, or when it's used in the Old Testament. In other words, it's kind of a picture of God coming to bring riding on dark clouds, okay? And the dark clouds point to doom and gloom, impending destruction on the city. Okay, so another event which is mentioned to be included in all these things that will surely come to pass is the Great Tribulation. So let's look at this period. It's also referred to as the 7-year tribulation. So this occurred during the years leading up to the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Now, the 7 years is broken into two halves. For the first 3.5 years, Nero, the Antichrist, persecuted the church. So you can do more research on why Nero is identified as the guy here. There's a lot that points to him, because Nero Kaiser or Caesar is actually numerically equivalent to 666. And then in the next 3.5 years, the war between the man of lawlessness, which I've identified as John Gischala here, together, so they had war between the Zealots. He was the leader of the Zealots. They were having wars with Jewish factions in the city, and also with the Roman armies led by Titus, the Roman general. And it was the worst period of carnage and suffering, which climaxed with the destruction of the temple. It should be temple, and the sacking of the city. So that's why we have these two guys here in the front of the title page. Now, expressions like one will be taken and the other left, and let those in Judea flee to the mountains, these are referring to how some people would end up trapped in the city during the Roman siege, while others would be able to escape. So this is why this is something many confuse to the rapture event. Okay, so one will be taken, the other left. So in the rapture, we think that one is taken to go up to heaven, to be in the clouds, and the other who is left behind. Okay, but actually it means similar to how the judgment in the flood of Noah happened. Those who are taken are those who were destroyed by the judgment, and the other who was left, was left to survive. So if you ran out of Judea during that time and didn't bother to take up your clothes, pack up, you would have been able to escape the siege. Okay, so you would be left to survive this destruction. All right, so the key sign signaling the abomination of desolation. This is mentioned by Daniel in the prophecy of the 70th week. Okay, so this was when they saw Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Okay, so this abomination of desolation was actually the Roman siege. That when they surrounded the entire city, and everyone was trapped inside, that was the sign, the main sign that they were reaching the climax. So Luke 21:20 explains why this is the equivalence. Okay, Jerusalem surrounded by armies. And then a major discovery I just realized today is that the lightning moment when the zealots in Jerusalem, led by John of Gischala, shut the city gates and exits during the Passover celebrations in 70 AD was the key defining event that Jesus was referring to when he said, "Of that day and hour no one knows." Okay, so this event of that day and hour no one knows is actually referring to when the city gates and exits were shut. So this is why Jesus was saying that his coming would be like the lightning flashing from east to west. It's because once the city gates were closed, there was no longer any way to escape. That spelled your doom if you were trapped inside the city. And so the church during that time was able to be warned in advance because they knew about all these events that were about to take place, because Jesus outlined it to them. They were able to escape to a place called Pella while all this destruction was happening to Jerusalem. All right, so all of that happened in 70 AD, so it's a past event. So when you're using this phrase, you're actually referring to the events that happened in 70 AD. All right, so the conclusion is, if anyone tries to use this verse to apply to the rapture of the church, which we are still looking forward to, they are using it out of context, because Matthew 24 was all completed when Jesus transitioned humanity from the old covenant age by destroying the temple and the associated sacrifice system in Jerusalem. We transitioned us to the new covenant church age of grace and salvation through his blood. So, in other words, Matthew 24 is all something of the past and has nothing to do with the future rapture. Okay? So, hope that clarifies. And if you come across anyone who tries to use this phrase again to shut up people trying to look forward to a possible timeline of the rapture, you can use this video, point them to this video, and they can open their eyes to the misconception that has been plaguing our Christian circles. Okay, God bless and shalom.